coronavirus
Listen up.
from reaching the U.S., but we've perhaps delayed it by either enacting the travel restrictions or that China has done a reasonably good job at now, mitigating a little bit the spread, right? Where the numbers have been consistently decreasing. So that, again, we haven't prevented spread in the U.S., but it's been delayed enough that healthcare systems here and other businesses, et cetera, have time to implement their own infrastructure protocol algorithms to deal with this outbreak, epidemic, and potentially a pandemic. Does that make sense?
Yep, it does. And let's hope that's all correct. Annie Carney, let's talk about what's been going on inside the White House. First, let's establish this is a president who tried to change science with a Sharpie when it came to hurricane path prediction. That picture lasts forever. Well, so do today's quotes from the briefing room. And I am guessing there's a certain amount of danger in it. They talked the boss into making an appearance, but it's what he said that's an issue tonight.
That's right. The idea of Trump doing this briefing was to calm a jittery public and a jittery stock market by coming out there the first time we see him after his return from India and really giving a true sense of what people should expect and how people should start to protect themselves against the spread of this virus. Even his allies on Fox and his allies outside the White House were kind of channeling to that proverbial audience of one that this was a great opportunity to look presidential and to tell the facts. The Donald Trump we saw out there in the briefing room was very casual, kind of left the facts to the other people that accompanied him out there. But he clearly, publicly and privately, just wants this problem to go away. He wants to downplay it. He's has called people who are talking about fears about it alarmist. He doesn't want to be alarmist, and he's kind of holding on to any comment that makes it sound like this will naturally be a problem that just gets removed from his plate. That's what we saw publicly, and that's what he's been saying privately as well.
Lanhee Chen, I want to read you a tweet from a guy who's active on social media, Democratic Senator from Hawaii, Brian Schatz. I would like a president who doesn't treat the threat of a global pandemic like a personal grievance. And Lanhee, you have seen federal government emergency response up close. How does this differ from that?
Well, I mean, first of all, the challenge with this particular situation is that it's basically come completely out of the blue. During the Bush administration, we did some pandemic planning around the avian flu. We also had bioterrorism response. These were things you could prepare for. In this particular situation, this is what a lot of folks would call a black swan event. It's completely come out of left field. Now, it doesn't mean that we haven't done some kind of pandemic preparedness before. It just means the exact circumstances around this particular coronavirus are different from anything we've seen before. Now, that having been said, there's a reason why you usually have public health professionals like your CDC director, your NIH director, deliver messages that are more factual in nature, deliver messages that are related to what's actually happening, trying to reassure the public with the facts. And the president's job really is to project an air of confidence about the fact that government has a plan and there is a whole of government response. So I think what you're seeing here is the difficulty when the president begins to drift into territory that probably is better left to public health professionals. So the challenge becomes, how do you get the president out there? How do you get him on the message you want him on, while also recognizing he has a very important role to play, as do the public health professionals separately?
Annie Carney, this may test the limits of the president's ability to declare what the narrative is and declare his own facts. He can say, as he did today, that there are 15 cases in the U.S., that of that 5 of them are ill. But the reports of 60 and the new cases that are part of regional news where people live in this country, they're going to take on a truth all of their own.
This is sort of a reckoning for a president who has a very difficult relationship with the truth and has exaggerated facts when they help him and downplayed other things when they haven't. Small things like saying that the noise from windmills cause cancer to larger falsehoods that he tells. He hasn't paid too much of a price for it so far, but this is slightly different. He can't continue to say by April, when it's warmer, this virus will be gone on its own, or say that only 15 and that number is going down, people are affected by it. If people, as you say, in their communities are actually physically getting sick, it will be a new reckoning for his being able to get away with telling falsehoods and having people just go along with it or actually believe him.
And Lanhee, as a practical matter inside the federal government, what do we gather from the president putting Pence out as the front guy to front the effort, with Secretary Azar of Health and Human Services still insisting he chairs the task force?
Yeah, I think there needs to be clarity regarding who is leading the whole of government response. My sense is that the president indicated it was going to be Vice President Pence. I think the reason he did that was to try to elevate the situation, to demonstrate that there would be a very much a top official in charge of the response. Obviously, one of the big challenges in federal policymaking is you've got overlapping responsibilities already. There are interagency processes where you've got different people from different cabinet agencies involved in situations. And so the most important thing for the federal government going forward, for the president, for his administration, is to be crystal clear regarding who is leading this, who has the responsibility to execute on whatever the government strategy is, but more importantly, who, if this goes wrong, is responsible. And I think those are all important things for the administration to convey over these next several days.
And to Dr. Azar, no relation, you can walk outside of this building in a city like New York and walk right by someone who has just tonight come off an international flight at John F. Kennedy International Airport or over at Newark and so on. The New York Post is reporting that on Long Island, 83 people have agreed to quarantine because of possible coronavirus exposure. Is this the kind of story we're going to be seeing regionally more of?
I think so. And I think, I think the idea that the government has and, healthcare systems are having, and we should have as individuals too, is to think about preparation and not think about panic. There are some things that are reassuring about this. The 80% of people have a mild illness. That's certainly news that we want to hear. And I think that the American public also needs to understand that healthcare workers in this country, this has been top of mind for the last at least 2 months. And that the messaging from CDC has provided guidance for healthcare systems to reinforce infection control measures, to make sure that they can handle an influx of cases on top of influenza, to make sure that healthcare workers have, personal protective equipment and adequate supplies. So we're prepared for a little bit of the unknown, but everyone's kind of on board with this, together, I would say.
I'll take that. To Dr. Natalie Azar, to Annie Carney, to Lanhee Chen, our thanks for taking on a difficult topic at the top tonight. Coming up for us, as we mentioned, the president puts Mike Pence out in charge of a public health crisis. We'll ask a former senior White House official if this White House is prepared, in fact, for what may be to come. And later, what to watch for from Democrats during these final few days before another critical contest as the 11th hour is just getting started on this Wednesday night.
One has to ask the question,
Can my side be firm?
Or is just getting started on this.
if other administrations was not properly prepared for whatever occurred on a biblical scale, such as Katrina, pertaining to FEMA, the fires out in California. Last year, along about April, I think it was April or May. It may have been on up into July or something. I just know it was last year. The Mississippi River was flowing at its banks and overflowing to some degree towards seeing massive flooding all up and down the lower Ohio. And there was a system that built out of the Gulf that was basically reaching hurricane status because of its strength. It may actually have been a hurricane. If that would have hit just right towards going up the mouth of the mighty Mississippi, with the Mississippi River already being at its banks, that could have very well easily breached the banks and the levees that we have spent billions of dollars on, the Corps of Engineers, towards building, towards trying to protect New Orleans, to the point that we would have seen another catastrophic event unfold right in front of our very eyes, similar towards Hurricane Katrina, just simply based around flooding of New Orleans. We would have seen that again last year. It just so happens, rather than it hitting directly into the mouth of the mighty Mississippi, it went west of the mighty Mississippi, and it carried itself more up into the way that I remember now. I'm going by strictly memorization here. It went more towards the Texas region than it did the Louisiana region. Now, I think Louisiana still got hit by some substantial winds and a lot of rain out of that system. But the point that I'm trying to make is this: we come within, I'm going to say 50 miles of possibly seeing another catastrophe that was going to hit on the same level as Katrina last year. In addition to all the fires out west. In addition to all the flooding. In addition to the island of Puerto Rico that got basically wiped off the map. I think it was Puerto Rico. It may have been another island or two down there that got hit. That was devastating. There's so many catastrophes here lately, it's difficult for me to keep up with all of them, especially just out of memory, because we have had just one absolutely phenomenon event after a phenomenon event, to the point that it has just been absolutely unreal to see how that we have been bombarded by nature. And I told somebody the other day, I go, nature is turning out to be bipolar. And she goes, what are you talking about, bipolar? I said, well, the people, the more that the people become erratical, the more that the weather becomes erratical. I said, it's almost like a mirroring image of whatever that the people are doing down here on the planet. That's what Mother Nature is doing above us. And the crazier that the people become, the crazier that the weather becomes. And the woman looked at me, she said, I get your point. She said, I think you may be onto something. I don't know if anybody's ever looked at it that way or not, but that's the pattern that I'm seeing, that the more that society becomes unhinged and unbalanced, the more that our weather patterns become unhinged and unbalanced. And now, we're not just talking about a weather event per se, or an atmospheric event per se pertaining to global warming, but now we're talking about a microscopic biological germ that obviously is wreaking havoc upon to the global society. And if the truth be known, we probably don't know maybe a tenth, a third of what actually has occurred or is going on right now over in China. Because one country is going to suppress that to the world That way it don't look like such of a black eye to that country. In other words, they don't want to air their dirty laundry. Nobody wants to air their dirty laundry. I don't care if it's on a personal level, or if it's on a county level, or if it's on a state level, or if it's on a national level. Nobody wants to air their dirty laundry. And I can understand China wanting to be discreet or suppress the truth and not wanting the rest of the world to know what's actually occurring over in China. When it comes to the cremation policies over there, I had no idea that their incinerators have been going 24/7 towards basically dispersing of the bodies over in China. 24/7. 24/7. Don't shut them down. Keep them going. Now that in and of itself is a frightful thought on the level of a Holocaust similar towards what went on with the Jews pertaining to the Nazis. That is a horrible, horrible thought to think that that has occurred over in China and is occurring. So, you know, it is a balance towards not wanting to be overly concerned versus not being concerned enough. It is a tight line, wire balance in regard to trying to alert the general public, at the same time not over alert the general public. It is a tight wire balance. It's all part of biblical Bible prophecy coming true towards the end times. And if people don't get their heart and their life together in recognizing that none of us is,
it's today's giveaway.
Absolutely none of us is guaranteed a tomorrow, then they really have no one's fault to blame other than themselves, because that's the whole primary purpose for people such as myself, even though a lot of people don't agree with my techniques, though a lot of people may disregard my message towards it being authentic. That's the reason why God sends forth people such as myself to get the message out to the general public. Hey, get your life in order. Get things in order. Get your life right. Quit playing games with this. You're talking about your very, very existence pertaining to your soul. And your soul is the most valuable thing up onto your existence. I don't care if you're a billionaire. I don't care who you are. The Bible says that if a man lose his soul, he has it was senseless for him to even come into existence if he's lost his soul. If you've lost your soul, you've lost everything. You know, it's kind of like how we look at monetary loss pertaining to a flood or a tornado or other natural catastrophes that can happen to us. We always say, oh, you know, those are all temporal things. We can replace those things. And we can. To some degree, we can. But when it comes to replacing a person's soul, that's something that can't be replaced. They don't have a solution towards recreating another soul. You only get one soul. You only get one chance at this thing. And if you lose your soul, it would have been better if you had never been born, according to the Bible, according to the Holy Scriptures, according to the Book of Life. Let's get back to some more of this problem that now the experts is addressing. Please listen.
Vacancies in critical administration positions, the White House Presidential Personnel Office, the folks that do the hiring, are now being led by a newly installed loyalist, a 29-year-old named Johnny McEntee, the president's former body man, who was initially let go by the White House for a security issue. He's back. He's the one now vetting candidates for loyalty, among other things. McEntee's previous claims to fame include a YouTube video of football tricks when he was a backup college football quarterback at UConn. Politico was first to report that among his new hires, a 23-year-old college senior to assist with paperwork and vetting. With us tonight to talk about all of it, former Ambassador Norm Eisen, who served as special assistant and special counsel to the president for ethics and government reform. That's under President Obama, who he also served as U.S. ambassador to the Czech Republic. On Monday, Norm completed a year-long stint as counsel to the House Judiciary Committee, where he played a prominent role in the impeachment hearings of President Trump. Counselor, Mr. Ambassador, we have a president who is removing witnesses once they're back at their jobs, pardoning the corrupt, and criticizing federal judges and, as of yesterday, members of the U.S. Supreme Court. How does this presidency stack up, in your view, where normal is concerned?
Brian, thanks for having me back on the program. The president has been off the rails for 3 years now, and his attack on all of the pillars of government trust, following the law, stating the facts truthfully, and relying on the career-long experts have set us up in a very, very dangerous situation for all of the functions of government, particularly in a public health crisis like we're now facing. But it's an across-the-board failure. And, having Mr. McEntee and Mr. Bacon take over presidential personnel, this is the White House, not Animal House. And that the reason in the Obama administration we were able to function effectively, the reason we had a scandal-free...
What did he say? An Animal House? Is he preferring to the White House being a funny farm? Is he preferring to the White House being a crazy house? Is he preferring to the White House towards it possibly being something on the same level? And God forbid, because I'm not making fun of those people, but on the level of it being basically some sort of a institutionalizing psychotic sicko group of people? Is that what he just got to comparing the White House to? Let's listen to it one more time.
Administration on all of the pillars of government trust, following the law, stating the facts truthfully, and relying on the career-long experts have set us up in a very, very dangerous situation for all of the functions of government, particularly in a public health crisis like we're now facing. But it's an across-the-board failure. And, having Mr. McEntee and Mr. Bacon take over presidential personnel, this is the White House, not Animal House. This is the White House, not Animal House. This is the White House, not Animal House. And that the reason in the Obama administration we were able to function effectively, the reason we had a scandal-free administration, Brian, was because we understood presidential personnel is where it all starts. Garbage in, garbage out. So putting these two men in charge just promises to continue the train wreck.
So we were watching you, especially during the hearings. You were there on the inside. What did you most want to be able to tell people on the outside about what you could see?
Just the overwhelming evidence of the president's disregard for the law, the Constitution, the norms that underlie that. It's really the values of the founders and the framers. But I felt we were able to convey that. The House managers were so adept, led by Chairman Schiff and Chairman Nadler and the rest of the House managers. You know, senator after senator came up to me from the other side of the aisle, Brian, and said, hey, you guys proved the facts. You proved the president had conditioned this White House meeting and aid on attacks on his political rivals. It's almost as if they were embarrassed to even they were not willing to deny the reality. So I do feel like the managers were able to get the case out. That's what I wanted people to know the most as I sat there at that table on the floor of the Senate. The facts. This president likes to run away from the truth. He couldn't run away from the truth here. I'm just disappointed that they didn't see the level of gravity. This was an impeachable offense.
Jennifer Rubin in the Washington Post called one Norm Eisen the most important figure you have never heard of in the saga of President Trump's impeachment. With apologies to your family, colleagues, and friends, is Congress's power diminished? Their power to backstop and enforce in a real or perceived way going forward?
Well, in one respect, it's diminished, but in one respect, and I'm optimistic about this, it's enhanced. Certainly, the House has demonstrated that they have the courage to speak out. The impeachment vote was a terribly difficult vote, a courageous vote for many members, roughly 36 members of the Democratic caucus. So that's encouraging. The Senate failed the test, but famously, and I was on the floor of the Senate for these remarks, Mitt Romney stood up. The first time in American history, Brian, that a senator has voted to convict on an article of impeachment against a member of a president of his own party. So the Senate is going to have to do much, much better. They're going to have to follow Senator Romney's courage. And we just have to hope that they don't fail the test if they're called on once more.
Norm Eisen, thank you very much for coming back on the broadcast after a long sabbatical, let's call it. We appreciate it very much. And coming up for us, the false story from the president today about what's to blame for the global stock market hit. That's when we continue.
Sabbatical. I don't know what that word means. The Google, no.
Inevitable. Are you going to be dealing with stock market issues and economy? .com and venture back. Be the first. Stock market has taken a big hit over the past few days. What can you do about that? And if the CDC is right in saying that the spread is inevitable, are you going to be dealing with stock market issues and economy issues for some time to come?
Well, I really think the stock market is something I know a lot about. I think it took a hit maybe for two reasons. I think they look at the people that you watched debating last night and they say if there's even a possibility that can happen. I think it really takes a hit because of that.
So it's important to note the stock market dropped almost 2,000 points before last night's Democratic debate. Just a point of order here tonight. Maya Wiley, former assistant U.S. attorney for the Southern District of New York, now with the New School here in New York, and Rick Wilson, longtime Republican strategist, co-founder of the Lincoln Project, a super PAC created by conservatives with the aim of defeating Trump and Trumpism. His new book is Running Against the Devil, a plot to save America from Trump and Democrats from themselves. Welcome to you both. And Rick, this puts us into some new territory. Sure. This was the president offering an alternate reality of a potential pandemic. What he may not be able to do is decide his own news here, because if you're living in suburban Cincinnati tonight, northern Kentucky perhaps, and they find local cases, you're going to hear about that on your local news. That's going to become your truth.
Yep. And there's a case tonight being tested in Walton County, Florida, heart of Trump country.
Yep.
That's not going to be something you can just walk away from. If it turns out to be a real case, we're seeing these things popping up all over. The safe bet was always to say, this could be bad. We'll do everything we can to stop it. But he can't stop himself from self-aggrandizing and lying about things. And it's actually, set aside my normal criticism of Trump, this is a danger to the country that he is not a trustworthy person for the American people. Even people who like him know he BS's them all the time. And now, if he says this is not a problem and people are being hospitalized, it's a problem.
There is something called stewardship, which our presidents have usually felt that in office. I've got you. You, the American people, I've got you. This president decided to relitigate Nancy Pelosi today, went after her congressional district. He diminished Chuck Schumer from the podium, basically gave his reelection case. And think about what the topic was they were supposed to be discussing. Sure.
Deny, deflect, and denounce. That's the way Trump leads. And unfortunately, and to Rick's point, and to your point about stewardship, that's not leadership. That's self-involvement, that's self-interest, and it's extremely dangerous. What's amazing to me is if Donald Trump is so smart about the stock market, why didn't he turn this into a story about how the stock market is irrational, is responding to fear, and he, as the leader of the free world, is here to tell everyone exactly what he's going to do to help ensure that the irrational stock market can start behaving more rationally. In other words, it's an opportunity for him to explain to the American people how it wasn't about him. It was about a virus that he doesn't control in the sense that it exists. And here's all the ways that he can protect us. And the problem with this president is, rather than leading, he lies.
There is that, Rick Wilson. Bloomberg is on the air in South Carolina and elsewhere with an ad hitting Trump on pandemic preparedness. Your stock and trade is tough television ads. Is all fair in love and war? Is this okay with you?
Look, I think it is a contrast to the leadership style that Bloomberg's trying to present, and all the other candidates would have their own leadership style as well. But what you see is somebody who came out of being a mayor of New York, and I've known a couple of mayors of New York over the years, and there's a premium on working the details, doing the nuts and bolts, not BSing, not pretending that it's all sunshine and roses, not saying it's X when it's Y. Not saying, hey, the towers are standing still when they're in the ground. Not saying there's nothing happening, there's no coronavirus here, we've got some magical solution that the rest of the world doesn't have when it's here and it's coming. And it is a contrast. And look, Trump will be judged on this because this is finally the externality. This is finally the thing from outside that he can't spin away. The virus doesn't follow him on Twitter. It doesn't care what he thinks. So it's going to spread. And we have done some things in this country, as Bloomberg points out in the ad, to reduce our capacity to handle these things in the last couple of years. And that is I think, an error that may come home to haunt us.
Not only because we have taken their car keys, both of our guests have agreed to stay with us over the break. Coming up when we resume our conversation, their takes on this day's 2020 headlines, including a rare rebuke from a former president. Is also involved in the story tonight that is South Carolina. He has broken his silence in this race, demanding that the state's television stations pull a misleading political ad. A well-funded pro-Trump super PAC using Obama's voice from his audiobook in 2004. They've doctored it to make it seem like he's criticizing his former vice president. Obama's communications director released a statement that reads in part, quote, "This despicable ad is straight out of the Republican disinformation playbook, and it's clearly designed to suppress turnout among minority voters in South Carolina by taking President Obama's voice out of context and twisting his words to mislead viewers." Still with us here tonight, Maya Wiley and Rick Wilson. Maya, let's talk about the black vote in South Carolina by making it plain it's not a block, by making it plain that for you it's not a sterile conversation of a demographic or an ethnic group. And that is because of Dr. George Wiley, whose birthday you noted today on social media. We have his picture to put on the screen. Doctorate at Columbia, postdoctoral fellow at Cal, if memory serves, U.S. Army veteran, if memory serves, and most importantly, a soldier in the struggle. And most importantly, as a subgroup, the struggle for civil rights for welfare recipients in this country. So let's talk about the black vote in South Carolina, and does it have the power to upend this race?
I love you, Brian.
Sorry to do that.
So here's the thing. You're right. It's not a monolithic vote. The thing about South Carolina is it's a state that it may be a red state, but it's a red state that's a third black. And the reality of that 1/3 black is it's a democratic vote.
Yeah.
It is a democratic vote. So, and the people who show up at the polls are often older. And we have a demographic divide in the black community in terms of a Joe Biden versus a, Bernie Sanders. And where black women are largely the people who do all the organizing work to get out the vote. So that demographic, if you heard what Representative Clyburn, who is beloved in the state, he is beloved in the state, his power and his voice should not be underestimated, but it's the way he said it. And he said, it's not just, it was the emotion, it was the authenticity, it was heartfelt. And if you notice, he invoked, his wife just passed away, and his wife was beloved. And he invoked his wife. He invoked his wife. And he did that and got teary when he did it. And he did it because, one, she was extremely important to him, but she was extremely important to the community. And it was a way of saying, we as a family, as people who are one of you, who understand us and our needs, we stand with Joe Biden because he knows us. And that was a very, very powerful message, and it should not be underestimated in its impact.
Rick Wilson, one of the great South Carolina traditions is the Clyburn family fish fry. Mm-hmm. If you can get invited or get your way in there, you're well advised. One of the worst is dirty politics.
Absolutely.
It's getting dirty early, in my view, having covered a few of these. The Obama ad, just one example.
It is one example, but I have to give the Democrats some tough love right now.
Okay.
Trump's team is not going to stop doing this. This is only the dawn of this strategy. This is only the beginning. They're going to have an unlimited amount of money. There is no bottom. They're going to go with this kind of stuff all the time. Now, Barack Obama was right today. I'm glad he did it, came out and said something. But that's not going to stop these people. They love this. They want to do this. They're going to play these games. And the Democrats had better get ready to get in this is not a policy fight. This is a bar fight. They better get ready to go hard because this is the beginning of this stuff.
And so do you buy the argument that these debates are circular firing squads, or do you think it's toughening?
Well, none of these guys is going to ever be prepared by these kind of debates to go up against Donald Trump. These kind of debates, I mean, the debate last night was an absolute train wreck, and everyone knows it. The moderators didn't moderate the debate. They should have put shock collars on these people because they were fighting so much. And the difficulty with this idea that it trains them to be tough against Trump is fallacious. Trump's not going to debate them on policy. He's going to go up there and pull his pants down. He's going to go up there and make faces and mug and do all the things that he did with Hillary Clinton and everybody else and make stupid jokes. And so they have to prepare themselves in a different way. But this thing that's going on right now with trying to play in the Democrats' camp is a lesson that Trump knows he's got to suppress the vote on the Democratic side because it's a very narrow window he has. Just as the Democrats have a narrow window, so does he. And if they think this is going to be fought out on Medicare for all,
the way that I understand it is because you have elected a circus clown. Now the circus clown is going to turn the whole thing into a circus. It's going to look funny. It's going to look appealing. It's going to look entertaining to some. But to others, it's going to dwarf the appeal by sickness. It's going to dwarf the atmosphere, the toxic atmosphere of reality, of proving itself to be just exactly that. A very, very sick, toxic atmosphere that is not to be laughed at, is not to be taken lightly, simply because you put the clown into the circus, and now the clown is doing what the clown is supposed to do. He's supposed to turn the circus into a circus. Does that make any sense? That's what I just got through getting out of this. Forgive me if I have misinterpreted what they are trying to say here.
Or policy ideas or communism, they're out of their minds. They need to toughen up right now.
Our thanks to our two friends, Rick Wilson and Maya Wiley, the daughter of a great man born on this day in 1931. Coming up, it was a dramatic moment from Watergate, and our next guest was there to see it for herself.
We all know. I'm going to leave it right there. God be with us. God be with us towards the seriousness of things that are unfolding here upon to this country and upon to this planet. And I just pray to God that we have the right people in place that can deal with what is occurring the way that it needs to be dealt with. Because there are certain things you just can't play off. And I realize that there's a balancing act here. Especially whenever it's something pertaining to people's lives literally, mortally dissipating and dying over. But it is a problem that really we should be blaming ourselves for, because pertaining to all the sicknesses and the diseases and everything else that's been going on, these are affairs that just didn't start yesterday. These are things that we've been patching up and putting Band-Aids on now for the past 25, 30 years. Regardless of whether it was AIDS, tuberculosis, being overweight, pertaining to the gun issues, pertaining to people shooting and killing each other, pertaining to diabetes, pertaining to the $23+ trillion in debt, pertaining to aborting all these innocent children, pertaining to people just given a green light on towards basically stripping off all their clothes and just doing whatever that they wanted to do in whatever the form that they wanted to do it in on live national TV. I could go on and on and on with the problems that has been escalating. That didn't just start yesterday. They didn't start yesterday. But now we're starting to see them materialize. And now people's eyes are beginning to awaken towards just exactly what this is all about. In which, if you want to declare it as a circus in the atmosphere, that's up to the individual that's interpreting what's going on here. I tend to want to interpret it as chaos, anarchy. I want to interpret it as a sad, sad moment in history, not just for the American people, but for the world. That's how I want to declare it. A very, very sad moment towards what is resonating out to society right now on every level, regardless whether it's coming in the form of fires, floods, pandemics, earthquakes, tornadoes, devastation untold. It's a sad moment for the planet. And the reason why I believe it's a sad moment for the planet is because what occurred in 1988 pertaining to the cover-up of biblical Bible prophecy. And that's all I'm going to say about it. That's all I'm going to say about it for right now, because it is so heartbreaking. It is so devastating in watching people's lives be destroyed this way. I don't have words to express my grief. Shalom.